listening to the sweet sounds of the After Movie Diner. Support us at patreon.com/After Movie Diner. Or I'll punch you in the teats. Rate and review us on iTunes, Earthling. And now, here's your host, John Cross.
That's right, I am John Cross, and this represents the last episode of the 10th year of us doing this show. The next episode will be our 10th anniversary episode, and from then on we will be enjoying the beginning of our 11th year as a podcast with a variety of special shows and shout-outs and interviews and various other things. Or we won't. Or we'll just do a one-off 10th anniversary episode and we'll just go right back to the way it was. We'll see how we feel. So often I can say to myself, I have these big grand plans, and then I never end up doing them. So, expect, I guess, the same level of shambolicness, but with a new shiny, hey, it's our 10th anniversary sheen. However, we have set up a webpage, aftermoviediner.com/diner/stories. That's aftermoviediner.com/diner, DINER-stories, where you can tell us your favorite memories of the diner, your favorite moments of the diner, how you got to meet us, how you didn't get to meet us, how you wanted to meet us, how you didn't want to meet us, what you think, whatever. You can tell us whatever you like or whatever you haven't liked about the last 10 years of the diner. There is a contact form there. There is a telephone number. There's an email address. There is all of the things for you to be able to contact us and give us a little bit of content for our 10th anniversary, just to show us that anyone out there still gives just an inkling of a shit. So that would be wonderful if you could go to aftermoviediner.com/diner-stories before, over the next coming weeks, let's just say. I'm not going to put a date on it, but over the next coming weeks, because going forward, the next, 3 or 4 shows, they're just going to be, as I said, kind of a little bit 10th anniversary gloss or pixie dust or whatever sprinkled or wiped over them. So anyway, that's just to alert you of that. And so here is our show. I will hand us over to when we recorded this, I think back in June. All right, here we go. How are you doing, oh behooded one?
I'm all right. I'm a bit knackered.
Yeah.
Because now where I work, if you get a day off, it means you have to do all the work you would have done on that day for the rest of the week.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm a bit knackered. But looking forward to putting my feet up tomorrow night and doing bugger all over the weekend.
I have to say, with the red curtain behind you and the black hood and then the very, very pale bum face, you do look like you would be perfect for a late 60s, early 70s Hammer film. Like, it's good, it's still watchable, but it's not classic Hammer. But
Ralph Bates is probably in it, and therefore bringing the tone down just a little bit.
Just a smidge.
Yeah.
you look like
stinking the place up with ill-deserved ham.
Yeah, and you look like an extra in that film.
Yeah, I can live with that.
Yeah, who might be carrying like a little satanic pocketbook or something, or muttering.
I probably mostly point at things.
Okay, you would know better than me.
Point at Peter Cushing. That's what I would do.
Yeah, and be like, why are you still in these films? Don't you have another career?
Does he?
No, I'm just saying it was always honorable how he continued with Hammer when he could have so easily carved himself, another.
I don't know that people were necessarily beating down his door. I mean, we've seen some of the shonky shit he was in outside of Hammer.
True.
You know what I mean?
But why weren't people beating down his door?
I think that
because he could do pretty much anything.
He could, but I just think that TV didn't pay very much, even though he did some TV. And movies generally in those days were still full of young, attractive people.
I guess it was once stuff like Star Wars came to England and stuff that he would get a little boost because he would show up.
Yeah, but then that was pretty late in his career.
Right.
I mean,
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is the After Movie Diner. Hello. We were just having a conversation about Peter Cushing.
We were. Not a very interesting one. Can I apologize if I'm a bit tired and therefore not being tremendously amusing?
No, that's fine. That's fine. There is no... this isn't called, the After Movie Comedy Diner. We attempt some level of humorous batonage, if that's a word.
Is that a word? Isn't that like when they put a flower on a dress in a wedding in Louisiana?
No, that's a corsage.
Oh, okay.
I think batonage is a word.
All right.
Batonage.
And it's not a Louisianan flower.
Batonage is the French term for stirring settled lees back into wine. So it's not what I think it is then.
I could be wrong, but yes, I think you may have been saying that word wrong.
No,
at this point for 20 years.
I haven't been saying that word routinely.
I think you bust that word out at every available opportunity in your meetings where you're like, I better impress them with a big word because they're about to rumble me. I'm about to be rumbled. They're about to rip the mask off my face, the mask of a website manager off my face to reveal a goon, a hopeless, clueless goon underneath. So I better use the word batonage as if it means something other than making French wine.
Yeah, well, that's not the case. I literally pulled the word batonage from the attic of my mind soup. And
the attic of your mind soup? The bottom of my mind soup, that would work. You know what I mean? The forgotten dented can at the back of the pantry of my mind soup, that would also be okay. Yeah, the attic of my grandmother's fallen down shed, that would be fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, any of things you could go with.
Any of those things. So anyway, yes, we do often attempt humorous banter, but
French winemaking.
French winemaking. But that doesn't mean that there is an implicit requirement for us to be funny.
That there's a bar that we have to clear a minimum requirement for comedy.
Yeah, and I have to say, we clear that minimum requirement just when people see our faces. You know what I mean? Like that already is humorous enough.
You mean like cosmically humorous?
Yes.
That our faces make people feel better about their place in the cosmos.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I buy that.
Definitely.
I buy that.
Definitely. Well, we don't have any emails or anything, or comments or messages.
Well, I think that's because you haven't put an episode out.
Think.
You only put out the Thomas Jane one today, so I don't think you put an episode out in between us recording last week and this week's one.
I didn't. I was behind, and that's my fault. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I would feel bad if I had
the capacity to feel.
If I had any soul left.
Yeah, I know.
If I had any, but I tell you what I did do, which is mildly interesting. Is and by mildly I use that word
accurately,
enthusiastically, because it's probably not interesting at all. But I went through a variety of lists, and I went through my letterboxed diary for the last 6 years, and put together a list of all the modern horror, because obviously we've been doing modern horror. I explained on the 1922 episode the whole thing that I'm interested in doing and the films I'm interested in watching going forward. And I thought, well, let's just see what I've already watched or accomplished, horror movies, monster movies, and horror adjacent thrillers since 2010, which was that's the benchmark I'm saying for modern horror. Everything from 2010 to this year, the last decade and few months, I'm counting as modern horror. And I have managed to already have racked up 134 films. So that shows that while...
Did you manually count that?
No, it counts it for you on Letterboxd.
Oh, okay.
I created a list on Letterboxd. I have modern horror I've already seen, and then my delve
How did you create the list then?
Well, I told you, I went through my Letterboxd diary, and I filtered it by just since 2010, and then every film that I had seen that counted as horror, I added it to the list. And then I went through a bunch of other lists, because I don't record every single movie I watch on Letterboxd, because I forget most of the time. Then I went through a bunch of lists of like the 100 best horror movies of the last decade, that kind of thing. And any ones on there that I'd already watched, I also added to the list manually.
I think you're right. I think the word mildly might have been overambitious.
But what I'm saying is...
I'm actually slightly worried that you've gone mad.
No, but what I'm saying is I started this delve into modern horror a couple of weeks back, thinking to myself, I haven't really watched a lot of modern horror. It turns out I've watched quite a lot of sort of the key films, and back when we were going to the cinema and seeing random things, or even watching random things on video on demand, I had seen a few like barrel scrapers that weren't in, the lists that were being made by whatever. So I put them all together, and yeah, there are some gaps from those lists that I'm definitely going to make up over the next few weeks. And we're going to talk about a few of them, but I always need a thing. I need a project. I need me. I need something to kind of hang my hat on, and modern horror is where it's at. However, it did lead to the original movie that we were going to be covering this week, that we then decided not to cover. So we should talk about that briefly. We
Sure.
should also talk about what I tried to do, so that even though the movie we're doing this week, officially doing this week, is not horror per se and not modern, I wanted to keep the modern horror theme. Obviously, we're going to talk about the movie that I watched all of, and you watched 10 minutes of and then realized what it was. But I also wanted to tell you that I just finished watching The Void, which was one of the movies that was on my original list of modern horrors I wanted to cover. One that you said, I've already seen it and I liked it. You should definitely watch that. And I went ahead and watched it. And so I just wanted to kind of speak about that as well. So, but let's talk about The Reckoning. Let's tear the Band-Aid off of The Reckoning and explain, because of course it's typical. I put a post up on Twitter being like, our next 3 episodes are going to be this. And then 5 minutes later, you call me up and you're like, we can't do this movie. That
was a pretty good me.
Thank you. So why can't we do The Reckoning? Well, The Reckoning was on my list originally. I didn't look into it very much. And it was a Black Death, Plague era set Neil Marshall movie with Sean Pertwee in it. And, we remember Neil Marshall from like Dog Soldiers and The Descent. And did you go on and watch Doomsday and some of the others, or not really?
I did see. I'm not sure I made it through Doomsday.
Okay.
I liked Hellboy, though. I know nobody else did, but I liked Hellboy.
My friend Brad Gullickson liked Hellboy over at Film School Rejects. He writes for Film School Rejects. And he liked it. He was interviewing Neil Marshall possibly before everything came to light, and was mentioning Hellboy to him. And even Neil Marshall didn't want to talk about Hellboy. So such was the drubbing that movie got.
Yeah, it did. Take a joke. It was a shame, because I thought it was fun.
But Neil Marshall, so one of the things I wanted to say was, what we've seen time and time again with movies that we've liked, whether it was the Bagman or Trust or Small Town Crime that I liked or whatever. A lot of the filmmakers behind those movies that we really hope we go, oh, them's some writers to pay attention to. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They tend to not go many places. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They tend to just kind of do that one or two films. I hope the Nelms brothers, who just did Fat Man with Mel Gibson, I hope they do a couple more, and they're on a trajectory. But
just quickly, just because it feels like it could be a tie-in later, I guess you could argue that the film we're going to end up talking about is an example of a guy like that who then went on to do something.
Yes, well, the theme of indie directors moving more into the mainstream does tie together all of the things I want to talk about. So that is
smashing. All right, well, you crack on. I'll sit here with me hood up, and every now and then I'll go, oh, that's mildly interesting. And that should give you enough feel to keep going, right?
I want us to go back and forth. I don't want this just to be about, but that's if you're looking for a thematic hook on which to oh my God, now you really do look like, because you push the hood back to reveal even more of your shiny forehead bump.
My dome.
I need to make that face again, because I have to get a picture of this because it's just too delicious. I gotta hang on. That's amazing. That should now be your new that should be your new headshot. But that's look at that. You literally look like something out of a hat. It's amazing. I'm very happy about that. For people who are wondering I'm not going to keep any of this. That doesn't matter. Anyway.
No, you should keep it. You should keep it and post it. People like that shit.
Okay. Yeah. It's heavy in the meme sphere.
I know that when I'm listening to a podcast and people say, oh, there's this really funny thing or a really funny photo, I'm like, I must know. It's
okay. Okay, well, there's a very funny photo of Jim that I will be posting on the After Movie Diner page. But yes, so the thematic thread to put through the needle of this podcast would be indie directors and what they did next, Squire. Because, like I say, a lot of the ones that we like either don't end up doing their, we're not even talking about the era of, Tarantino or the Kevin Smith or Rodriguez, where they were able to kind of, they had a second movie and everyone talked about their sophomore effort, you know what I mean? And then it kind of spun out. A lot of the people who are making films today either stay in the low budget realm and kind of make a name for themselves, sort of doing those, 500,000 to 2 million kind of genre films, or they don't go anywhere at all, really. And the guys who made like House of the Devil and You're Next and all those guys, like those guys have kind of gone on, they're like a collective. They've gone on and made a bunch of stuff, but it's all sort of within the same realm. Your man who did the Raid 2, and then was it The Prophet? No, the something or other on Netflix. He did like a folk horror on Netflix. The Prophecy, The Prophet.
Oh,
something like that.
Oh, I know. Garth, whatever his name is.
Evans.
Yeah, Gareth Evans. Gareth Evans or Gareth Evans? Gareth Evans. Yeah.
I think it's Gareth Evans.
Yeah, the one with what's his face, Dan Stevens.
Yes. But he sort of that's another one from that group, was The Guest with Dan Stevens in it as well. But yeah, no, Gareth Evans, who has sort of done, came out the gate with this low budget action movie that kind of blew everyone away, and then he's done bits and bobs here, but you don't see Gareth Evans like moving into Hollywood anytime soon. Do you know what I mean? And
that's a shame.
What?
Oh, wait, hang on.
What?
Oh, wait. Oh, no. Okay, so it works. It totally works. So The Reckoning and the Quick and the Dead are their 6th movies.
Oh, that's interesting.
Isn't that cool?
It is. So anyway, lots of examples of indie directors who we loved their first couple of movies, either staying in that indie realm or going nowhere. Neil Marshall with the sort of 1-2 punch of Dog Soldiers and
The
Descent, both of which were like phenomenally good movies to kind of, especially to come out of England or come out of Britain, but also to come out of kind of the low budget horror of the 90s. They were both films or early 2000s, whenever they came out, but they were definitely ones where you sat up and took notes. You were like, oh wow, this harkens back to stuff like American Werewolf in London and stuff, but also was doing its own thing, had a unique spin on it, had a look, a feel, a voice. Like, he came out of the gate swinging, and he was a guy that, especially as a Brit, you could kind of go, oh, keep an eye on Neil Marshall. And, you know, each film that came out was always going to be judged against those two films. And he never really, you know, he kind of hopped around genres. None of the genres really made a lot of sense. I mean, what the fuck was he doing with Centurion? Like that didn't really, you know, that didn't make a lot of sense. I mean, I suppose it would make a lot of sense if it was, you know, he went on to direct a couple of episodes of Game of Thrones. Like, I feel like something like Centurion would have been, to tie it to Sam Raimi, would have been something that like Sam Raimi and Rob Tappert would produce, like Spartacus or whatever, but it doesn't need to be a movie. Do you know what I mean? Mm. And then does Hellboy, which is sort of his first sort of big Hollywood movie. And his first, I think I'm right in saying his first movie in something like 8 or 9 years, like since Centurion. I think it had been a chunk of change between Centurion and Hellboy, in which he'd done a bunch of TV, but he'd done no movies. Hellboy was this huge flop, took a massive critical drubbing. And then here he was, poised for his so-called like return to low-budget British horror with The Reckoning, which went straight to Shudder in the States. And I think everyone was pretty excited by it until, and I don't know the timeline exactly, and I've not seen the Twitterverse, like, or horror films or Neil Marshall fans like talking about this either. Like, I only found out about the quote unquote scandal, news story that is adjacent to this movie by looking up the lead actress because I was wondering like what the fuck she was doing in the movie because that was
exactly my journey too. Sitting there going, how, because she co-wrote it and she executive produced it and she's starring in it. And then the moment she started, like, a lot of it is kind of silent, at least like the first 10 minutes, she doesn't say anything. Yeah. But the first time, and there was a lot of, like melodramatic, over the top scenes, but like there's not a great deal of acting happening. And then the first time she has to start talking back to the like squire bloke, when the squire turns up, I thought, oh wow, she's a phenomenally terrible actress. Like she cannot act for toffee. So I thought she must have been in something. That was my thinking. It was like she must have been like in Downton Abbey or like the equivalent, right? Yeah, some show in England maybe, or like Line of Duty, like something where like it made her a huge star in the TV sphere, and now she's like got a bit of weight to throw around, albeit in the low budget sphere. But that's why she's like the weird, like she's got extremely expensive hair and spotless clothes, despite this being the plague. It was all wrong, and she can't act. And so you go look at it, we go, well, and the thing, and the thing is like, that's what my brain went, and it did not go to like why she was in this movie and what was going on, and it was so mad. Before we reveal that, do you know what it also had me Googling? It had me Googling like, when was makeup first used in the UK, and when did eyebrow plucking first become? Yeah. Because look, I get it. Like, everyone wants to be, if you're going to be a lead actress in a horror movie or a lead actress in a
a plague movie or a medieval movie or whatever, you want to kind of start off pretty, even though at some point you're going to get covered in mud or blood or whatever.
Yeah, but
at least
hang on.
I understand the incentive to kind of go, well, look, this is maybe an early movie on my resume. I want to at least look good for a brief period of time before I get, go through the horror of it. But it was so implausibly she looked so implausibly 2021, even in a plague movie, even in a low budget plague movie, that I was literally looking up, like, when did eyebrow plucking first start? Because she has like perfectly manicured eyebrows, and she has not manicured is not the right word, but you know what I mean, like perfectly plucked 2021 eyebrows. She has, full L'Oreal fucking makeup and all the Maybelline.
And the hair,
whatever.
The hair alone is like, that's extremely expensive hair.
Yeah, extremely expensive hair. And she's meant to be the pauper wife of what was it, like a soldier who got the plague or something?
It was never established, I don't think. I mean, at least not in the first 10 minutes.
I don't know if he was a farmer or the soldier. He was...
Just bearing in mind, the reason I bailed, like, I stuck through some horrible movies for this podcast, right?
Yeah.
I have done it. The only reason I bailed was that, out of curiosity, I Googled who this actress was and why she managed to land this movie. And when I found out what the truth was, I immediately called you and said, we can't talk about this movie. There's no way we can talk about it without the central discussion being something that is just not going to like make us look good to talk about.
Right. And my, it's not even about looking good, because I don't particularly care about that. It's just that, I'm not one for idle gossip. Everything that I could read skirted a horrible line between, especially in the Me Too era, skirted a horrible line between, it could go one way, it could go the other, which is always like, I never want to be that person. And to all accounts, her and Neil Marshall, who are now together, sort of want to get past it and go on and make movies together and talk about their future and stuff, which is awesome. Go ahead and do that if that's what ends up happening. But
it won't.
But I don't think it will off the back of this film. But what was interesting was that I started this movie with, what went through my head was, we've lived through COVID, right? And we've lived through the Me Too era. These are things that have happened recently in the zeitgeist, right? It suddenly struck me as the movie started. I'm like, wait, a witch burning story in the midst of the plague is like a really, like, I don't know how I hadn't put it together. It would be a really good place in the hands of the right filmmaker to talk about those two things, like in the way that sci-fi jumps forward and talks about modern day with the, the distance of time that way. This would be a way to talk about present day and present attitudes to women and present attitudes to the disease and blah, 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 but with the distance of time, it being a historical thing, while also being able to kind of say, like, well, stuff hasn't really changed now, has it, kind of thing. And I thought, oh, what a great idea. And, and I thought about Dog Soldiers has obviously a sort of feminist message undertones. The Descent is I think one of the first horror films to be made with an entirely female cast. And Neil Marshall and so on. And I just thought to myself, like, oh, great. Like, it's a witch story in plague times. Like, this is definitely going to reference like everything that's going on right now. It's Neil Marshall. He's been known to like work with, do good work with females and be a female forward thinking director. And then I looked up the story and I was like, what? Like, it was disbelief. I was like, no, like, now I ended up watching the rest of the movie because I am someone that once I'm 45 minutes in, I am then I'm invested and I will finish out the film. And I'm either, I don't know whether I'm happy or sad to report that the movie doesn't get any better. It's a complete and utter mess. It doesn't know if it wants to be like an arched eyebrowed, campy, gore and torture filled romp through, witch burning and the plague with a lot of
Can I ask you a quick question? My thought before I looked it up, I had a strong feeling that I knew what it was going to be, and it was going to. I felt like it was going to be Mills and Boon does torture porn,
right?
And that kind of is that basically what it ended up being.
No, it's. I mean, yes and no. There's definitely a little bit of Mills and Boon does torture porn. What it is it doesn't know if it wants. It's a woman is accused of being witch, by a squire who just wants to get into her pants. That's all it is. Like the whole movie hinges on the fact that the local squire wants to get into her pants. And literally the squire murders her husband by swapping a plague-filled mug of ale with his so that the husband drinks it and gets the plague and kills himself. And then he can show up at their house and be like, you owe me rent. Maybe you could fuck me for it, essentially. She goes, no, I'm going to stick to my morals. I'm going to stick to my whatever. He calls in Sean Pertwee, who is the witch finder. Sean Pertwee tortures her, like, in increasingly gross ways, in between her having fever dreams of the devil showing up, like the actual devil showing up and, like, having sex with her. And it ends with her, like, wreaking some revenge, and then it kind of like ends, and it's kind of it then ends with like all these women were tortured and murdered and witch burning was terrible and blah blah blah, and it's so odd because it's like on one hand he wanted to make a, like I say, like a goofy porn filled, sex filled, torture filled romp through the Middle Ages, but at the same time he want to say something serious about, like, it was just such a confused, missed horseshit opportunity that
it sounds like somebody thought that making something that kind of is in the ballpark of those themes means you're talking about those things. There's no exploration about them. It's
exploration. No.
As long as you can say to a journalist with a straight face, oh, it's about this.
Yes.
Then that's enough. And you don't actually have to like explore that. And the rest of it does sound to me like Mills and Boon does torture porn. In other words, I don't just mean the bodices, but I mean in the same way that Mills and Boon presents romance and love in a particular way, right? Which is meant to be, whoever's reading the book becomes like the lead character and is swept up in, an ego stroking narrative where some incredibly handsome, interesting person falls madly in love with you. Yeah. And that's the escape. In this case, it's, the same outfit, whatnot, the same superficial engagement with whatever history is, in order to be somehow an interesting person, because it's the idea that to be tortured in that way is to make me interesting, because I have known pain. I've known torture like this, even though that's like, no, you haven't. You've known anguish, maybe, right? But it's that same thing. You know what I mean? Like that same idea of vicarious emotional satisfaction from pretending like you're going through these things. You know what I mean? So those things would happen to you because of how interesting and cool you are.
Yeah, completely. You're right. And I think one of the problems is, so very quickly, and again, I'm not going to give an opinion, not going to pass judgment. I'm just going to very quickly explain. Charlotte Kirk, who is the star of the movie and the writer of The Reckoning, as well as the producer, and now the current girlfriend of Neil Marshall, was part of a scandal that caused the firing or quitting of two major Hollywood executives. Because basically when she was much younger, although she's not that old already, but like when she was younger, about 7 years ago, something like that, when she first came to Hollywood, 19, 20 years old, she had consensual affairs with these men who were incredibly powerful Hollywood executives. She has claimed that, or said that, she doesn't feel like it fits into the Me Too era because it was a consensual thing. She didn't feel like she was being manipulated. There have been, text messages and emails released and so on that have led people to file lawsuits claiming that she was trying to blackmail and manipulate them to get roles, to get parts, to get whatever in film. And she has said, this is the timeline. There are plenty of roles I've done since then. I'm only interested since then without their help. I'm only interested in pursuing my acting career now and showing what I can do as an actor on my own merits. Here are the things that I've done as an actor on my own merits, etc. Neil Marshall, her current boyfriend, and her last boyfriend, who's was also a filmmaker whose name I don't know and can't remember, they both essentially got involved in the drama surrounding a possible situation. Again, there is no real deep information about this, but possible scenarios whereby they tried to parlay some of this scandal into getting their films made. That's just the fact of it. That's not me judging it. That's just what I've read. I'm not judging it. I'm not saying, I'm the first to say that men in a position of power, when faced with a young, attractive woman, I'm going to blame them before I blame her, obviously. But that's the most I'm going to say about it. Take what you will from those scraps of information. Please look it up yourself. Google it, find out, form your own opinions, whatever you want to do. I don't really have an opinion either way. It looks like the two powerful men were hurt because they lost their jobs. And again, I don't know why or how or what decisions led. I think it was more that the studio panicked that in the Me Too era, any whiff of a situation like this is a fireable offense, whether the woman was claiming, damages or not, or claiming abuse or not, or claiming whatever. And she's not. The most recent interview she gave, she's not claiming that at all. And in fact has said, I don't want this to be part of the Me Too era. But the only reason I say all that is because whether they like it or not, it does. And because she wrote the script, and because Neil Marshall directed it, and because they've talked about wanting to make films together, and because they're making this film off the backdrop of that, and because the film is the film that it is, in other words, it is not a genuine discussion of man's inhumanity to woman and humanity's response to a plague. It's not an honest look at that. Even in a goofy way, it's not an honest look at that in any way, shape, or form. And coming off the back of this low-level scandal in Hollywood, it just doesn't sit right, because on one hand you're saying in an interview, I'm over this, I've moved past this is all about my future and about making movies with my husband or my boyfriend or whatever and doing whatever, and I want to be taken seriously as an actress. And then the first movie you make out of the gate just seems to be like, all men are bastards, am I right? You know what I mean? And that's fine if that's the movie you want to make, but it was made in such an artless way that off the back of this story, the whole thing became a quagmire, basically, and we didn't want to go any further. That was about all we wanted to discuss about it. If anyone's interested in watching The Reckoning, I would strongly suggest you don't. It does have a few interesting visuals in it, and Sean Pertwee does show up and chew the scenery, but outside of that, it's a shockingly hollow film which seems to massively lose its way during the second and third acts.
Cool.
I didn't say anything bad there.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, we can't, in the nicest possible way,
we can't go any further
with you, because there's all this shit around it that we can't really talk about. So it just has to be like basically like a statement about like the film and what it means, and then we have to walk away from it. That's why I don't want to do it.
No, exactly.
And I'm not. That's not me being like upset with what just happened. It's like there's literally no other way to talk about the film except in the way that you just did.
There's two sad things about it. One,
you can't have banter about that. No. I mean, any other movie where somebody is that terrible especially in an attempt to prove that you're not terrible, right? That's the purpose of the movie. That should be, we should be able to, have a laugh about that, but we can't. So,
everything about the movie is sad. It's sad that Neil Marshall's return to horror is not a reason for excitement. It's sad, the story that led into the movie. It's sad that the movie doesn't artfully either try and address it in some sort of interesting, artful way. And it's sad that, and I hadn't thought about this, but there is definitely a movie to be made about witches in the Plague era that references or that informs or is that about the, life that we are living right now or we have lived through in the last 5 years. There's definitely a movie to be made there. Folk horror has had something of a resurgence. I couldn't make it through The Witch. It was just so boring, but maybe The Witch.
I love The Witch.
Maybe The Witch tackles some of this. I couldn't get through. Like, it was like 10 minutes of a picture of a candle, and I'm like, enough.
I really like The Witch. I love the fact that every single line of dialogue was taken from newspaper reports or books or diaries of that time. Every single line.
Oh,
very cool.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
I just was watching the film and I'm like, get on with it.
I loved it.
Midsummer. There was a film that I covered for the After Movie Diner website called Gwen. I interviewed the director. That was a good little folk horror. Folk horror has had something of a resurgence.
Especially on TV, actually. There's a bunch of European TV shows that deal with that kind of folk horror.
Yeah. And so, prime for someone to come in and do an actual intelligent, interesting, horror thriller about that era. Sadly, The Reckoning was not it. And that's really what I found sad about it. I mean, that and the fact that Neil Marshall looked to be someone who was poised to potentially make the transition that certainly a horror director had not made since, those 70s and 80s horror directors, the Wes Cravens and the Sam Raimis and the Tobe Hoopers and stuff. He looked set to be the guy who could maybe have a Hollywood career, and looks to have maybe taken a big plop all over that. And that's a shame. That's a big shame for me. Looking at guys who have taken a different route very quickly, and then we can move on to The Quick and the Dead, which is our main topic tonight. But to sweeten up the sour pond that The Reckoning had created comes The Void, which is another movie that was on my list of modern horrors that I wanted to catch up on, which I thoroughly enjoyed. It obviously has a huge amount of nods to lots of other stuff, but it is wildly inventive, very well acted, short, sweet, to the point, has phenomenal special effects in it. It's seemingly all practical special effects, apart from maybe one or two shots of the void, quote unquote. Its closest is probably sort of, it definitely has Lovecraftian overtones. It's definitely got a bit of Reanimator in there and The Thing and some other stuff, but it's very well done. Really enjoyed it. It didn't reference anything so heavily that it put me off or bothered me. So I was a real fan of it. It comes from two guys who were part of a filmmaking collective called Astron 6 that famously had a bit of a dust up with Troma because they made some of their movies, and Troma released, I think, a couple of them back in the day when they were first making films together. But they made one movie called Father's Day, which I kind of poo-pooed at the time that it came out because I'm like, oh, it's just one of those filmmaking people who have seen a couple of exploitation movies from the 70s and therefore have decided for their movie to be like, yeah, let's just put like nuns with eye patches and shotguns on motorbikes. And, it was all just like so fucking trite that it annoyed me when I first saw the poster for that. So I kind of did poo-poo it. But Jeremy Gillespie and Steven Kostansky from Astron 6 went on to make a whole bunch of stuff. But most interestingly, rather than rather than trying to necessarily be like, we're just going to be horror writer directors and we're just going to try and do the Sam Raimi or Wes Craven trajectory or the John Carpenter trajectory and just kind of keep pumping out movies. Because these guys are also able to do special effects, they're able to do art direction, they're able to do cinematography, they're able to do editing, because they, like I said, they were part of this collective Astron 6, which was Adam Brooks, Jeremy Gillespie, Matt Kennedy, Connor Sweeney, and Stephen Kostansky. Because they were from this collective and they kind of all turned their hand to everything. What's interesting about these two guys is they've gone off and done art direction and visual effects and editing on projects all over the place. And they've done some, actual directing, some actual writing of themselves as well. But they've been involved with It Chapter 2, Shazam, Star Trek Discovery, the Fargo, the TV series, Suicide Squad, Poltergeist, I guess the remake, Hannibal, the TV series, a whole bunch of stuff. They've worked with your least favorite horror director, Guillermo del Toro. They've worked with him on Pacific Rim and a bunch of others that they've done with him. And it's just interesting because, here are some guys who were obviously all-rounders out of necessity because they were like, we want to make these kind of movies. These movies tend to have special effects in them. They tend to have gore in them. They tend to have creature effects. They tend to have, stunts and stuff. But we want to make them for peanuts and we want to get them out into the world. And so they've, instead of just saying, well, no, now we just want to be John Carpenters and we just want to, have our names above the title and just direct films, they've kept their career going at really high levels by doing multiple things. If you look at them on IMDb, they're involved in makeup, directing, writing, editing, acting, special effects, producing, visual effects, cinematography, and they've just been able to kind of spread their stuff in many different corners of the industry, which I can't think of another filmmaker or another group of filmmakers to really have done that and gone, well, look, we just want to have a career in the industry. If that means that, they've seen the writing on the wall that most people who make movies like The Void, next week are not suddenly making movies in Hollywood, more's the pity. Because I don't really understand, I would have assumed Blumhouse, the entire reason that was set up was to cherry pick people like this to get them to direct films. But as far as I'm aware, and I would have to do more research, but as far as I'm aware, any of the directors that have made anything that is even remotely worth a damn, in my small, humble opinion, have not gone on to do bigger and better things for studios, even studios like Blumhouse. 6 months ago, I would have known exactly what I was talking about. At this point, my brain is past 41 and my brain just went. But anyway, applause to The Void. I thought it was very good, very well made. It was made for absolute peanuts, and it looked the beans. So it is. It's definitely a case of no one should ever say, I can't make this movie for less than $5 million, because you can. They made this movie for, I think, most reports say the budget was under $100,000, which I find baffling because of how good it is and how well it's done and how great it looks. But even if the budget of this movie was $500,000, it would still be awe-inspiring. So no fucking excuse, people. If your indie movie doesn't look at least half as good as The Void, then you're doing it wrong. So big applause to them. Really liked it. And I wanted to watch it and I wanted to talk about it because I wanted my little trip into modern horror to have some worth and some payoff. You know what I mean? I didn't want it to be like, oh, I watched The Reckoning and it dashed all my hopes of being alive. So 1922, good. 70s throwback horror. Very well done. Good, strong performance by Thomas Jane. The Reckoning, sad. It's just sad. Just makes you sad. And I mean that genuinely. I don't mean, it's sad, like pathetic. I mean, it genuinely made me sad because Neil Marshall was someone who should have fucking, he should be the guy who's the latter day answer to John Carpenter or John Landis or whatever, and he isn't. And The Void shows that you can make a 80s throwback movie or 70s throwback movie or a special effects heavy, weirdo, low budget indie horror movie without going, look how 80s referential we're being. My big problem with Father's Day from the trailer and the poster and everything else, which kind of came out around the time of that hobo with a shotgun resurgence of like gritty grindhouse films, blah, 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 nuns with guns, was that I was just like, I don't need another, like, there's nothing in this, I assumed. Maybe I should watch it now, but there was nothing in it from what I could tell other than pure exploitation just to kind of make a name for itself. And I don't really have a lot of time for that. It's one of my bugbears, along with people who do 80s throwback horror in a way just to kind of go like, look how 80s and throwback we're being. But The Void didn't do that. So it skirted the line occasionally, but it didn't do that. And I was very impressed with it. So high marks for The Void, 4 out of 5 stars. All right, so we have reached the middle part of the show before we are going on to talk about The Quick and the Dead, and I am afraid, and I'm so sorry, go make a cup of tea, do whatever you want to do, but I have to shove a bunch of adverts in here because Spreaker does demand it. So I apologize for this onslaught of advertising. None of these companies do we endorse or give 3 shits about. So please do not, go ahead and use any of these companies because you think we here at the After Movie Diner endorse any of them. We do not. But to keep this free, then we have to do this. If you don't want this to happen anymore, go over to Patreon, patreon.com/After Movie Diner and sponsor the show. If everyone who listened to the show sponsors the show, I would remove it off this platform entirely and just move it over to Patreon. But that's not the case. So in order to pay hosting fees and various other things, we have to have these adverts in here. I am sorry. Ignore them. Do not support these companies, especially if it's Geico. Fuck Geico. And here are some adverts. And then back to our show. So when Jim called me up halfway through watching The Reckoning, and was like, I can't watch The Reckoning. I've just found out the story behind it. He said, what movie have you watched recently that we can talk about? And on Sunday, I did what I thought was a contemporaries Western day. So I watched Tombstone, The Quick and the Dead, City Slickers, and Young Guns, which was actually like a really good...
Contemporary is really optimistic, given that all those films are around 25 to 30 years old.
No, well, someone pointed that out to me, but I was like, contemporary, within context.
At the point that you stopped growing, spiritually and mentally. Yes.
I mean, I still feel like, The Quick and the Dead just came out. Even though, like you say, it's many, many, many years old. So I was like, well, we could talk about one of those. And the one that I really wanted to have a conversation about, because I feel like it's the film after which I draw the line on Sam Raimi to some extent. And so as a director who I thought was poised to be a really unique, creative voice. And in my humble opinion, I feel like he has squandered it by, instead of him being himself, by trying to be everyone but himself, by trying to be Spielberg, by trying to be the Coen brothers, by trying to be Jon Favreau, whatever. Like, he's tried to be everything but himself. And the only time anyone likes anything that he does is when he is himself. They give Spider-Man the pass because they genuinely love Spider-Man. So they're like, hey, a director I like with Spider-Man, so that they consider Spider-Man. But like out of all of the Spider-Man trilogy that Sam Raimi did, there is like 2 good scenes out of all 3 films. So if you go back and watch them now, they are not good films. But anyway, Quick and the Dead is the movie after which I draw the line on Sam Raimi, because I feel like everything since then has been compromised and sad and not what I would have liked. But The Quick and the Dead is, for my money, a phenomenally interesting, fun and good movie. It's not a great movie, but it's a phenomenally good movie. And so of all of those, I said to Jim, I want to talk about The Quick and the Dead, and you agreed. So I've talked way too long, and everyone is very tired. So could you say something about The Quick and the Dead and talk to me about your history with the film and your history with Sam Raimi? Because I think it's different.
So I guess what I remember most about The Quick and the Dead is that I feel
like... Did we
like...
watch it for this, or are you just remembering something?
No, I watched it last night.
Okay, good.
I remember, or rather, watching it again now, I feel like it was the victim of unfortunate timing. In that, I seem to remember it coming out at a time when the Western was back. And I suspect that's why it got greenlit or made. Like Unforgiven.
That's not why it got greenlit and made, but okay.
It just feels like it came out when there were like big, like when the Western was back. Maybe it was Dances with Wolves, or didn't Dances with Wolves bring the Western back? I think it was Costa that brought the Western back. And people were like, let's greenlight some Westerns. And there were lots of Westerns, but they were all very, well, Kevin Costner Westerns, right? They were like sweeping vistas, and, you know, they were like, what's his name? John Ford Westerns.
So Dances with Wolves was 1990.
Okay. This is 95, right?
This was 95. So you could kind of claim that, the 90s definitely had a resurgence of the Western. You had Dances with Wolves, Back to the Future Part 3, Quigley Down Under, Young Guns 2, all in 1990, City Slickers, 1991. When was Unforgiven? Last of the Mohicans was 92. Unforgiven was 92. So I think by the time you get to 95, I'd be interested, like, how many Westerns were still...
I just remember, I'm just saying, it's just what I remember.
Right.
That at the time, people were making John Ford Westerns, not Sergio Leone Westerns, is my point. You know what I mean? The whatever was being tapped into was like the epic.
Yeah, they were making American frontier films, and
yeah. And like, you know, and it was all like serious and epic and blah.
Yes.
And this one is, so the closest I could think in terms of while I was watching it last night.
Yeah.
I tell you what it reminded me of. It reminded me of basically like Spaced. Is what it reminded me of, in that it's about, I really want to tell a good story, or Hot Fuzz, or Shaun of the Dead, right? It's like, I really want to tell a good story. I really love the this particular genre that I'm telling the story in. But I want to have, like, just every now and then, I want to have a bit of fun with it. That's all. It's like a fun genre. The way the genre is so slightly over the top that it's okay to have some fun with it. And that, I remember at the time being like tonally very, very weird that you didn't do that with Westerns, right? And then Spaced, which is, what is Spaced? Like late 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah, that's exactly when it is, 99, I think.
Yeah, so that notion of you can love something and you can play around with it was around then. Whereas this is still like, it feels like in thrall to Tarantino, where it's like, if you love something, you have to ape it. That's what you do. You ape. You don't play. You don't have fun. You don't try and tell necessarily an original story. You're just trying to replicate the feeling of those things that you loved rather than having fun with it. So
I massively disagree with that, but that's fine. I don't massively disagree with that to have a go at you. I totally understand where that opinion comes from, and I'm happy for you to take that stance, and that's fine. That's not how I view it. That's maybe weirdly how I would have viewed it when it came out. My rewatch of it sort of gave me a completely different take on the film. But please carry on.
No, go on. No, go crack on.
No, because I think first of all, because it's interesting. I tried to rewatch Unforgiven again recently and couldn't get into it. I just couldn't. Like I was like, I don't know what this is trying to do here. Like it just, I don't know. Like I couldn't get into it at all. And westerns, to be fair, are not particularly my genre. There aren't many westerns I could point to that are interesting or compelling enough to really hold my attention for whatever reason. There are a handful. That I really, really love. And even some old ones, but it's not a genre that I've watched a ton of. So I don't pretend to be too much of an expert. But what's interesting about Quick and the Dead, for me, watching it now, is that on the surface, right? On the surface, it's a Sharon Stone star vehicle, right? With a somewhat cack-handed revenge plot that is centered around a contest that gives a gunfight contest that gives a director like Sam Raimi the opportunity to do like what you're talking about. This is how they traditionally film shootouts in westerns, with all of the cliches of, fingers waggling over the handle of the gun and, close-ups of the eyes and zoom-ins of the clock or whatever. Like, this is how they normally tell that. This is now going to be essentially with Sam Raimi, with each passing gunfight, kind of trying to top himself, sort of how ludicrous he can make the gunfights. Like on the surface, and that's how I'd always enjoyed it. I'd always enjoyed it that way. And actually, that's how that movie came to be. Once Sharon Stone had done Basic Instinct and had done, she did Total Recall in 90, Basic Instinct in 92, Sliver in 93, and The Specialist in 94. And would go on to do Casino in the same year as The Quick and the Dead. So this was sort of, prime Sharon Stone. And Sharon Stone was asked, but like Sharon Stone had a contract with the studio and wanted to make this movie. She wanted to make a female-driven Western. That's what she'd always wanted to do. And she got her pick of directors. And on her shortlist was Sam Raimi. So it wasn't a movie that Sam Raimi was trying to get off the ground. It was a movie that Sam Raimi was brought into. I don't know about the script. Like, I don't know, whether this was a script that had been kicked around Hollywood or, that this was one that, she had made or whatever. I'm looking at it now, and it does say that Simon Moore wrote the spec script as an homage to spaghetti westerns. I don't really think that it doesn't fit neatly into either the John Ford American mold or the spaghetti westerns mold. It's certainly more spaghetti western, but it's not. It doesn't have the full blown like gonzo sensibility of a spaghetti western. But basically, Sharon Stone is 90% of the reason why this movie kind of got put together, which to me always makes it more interesting because it's a rare time in Hollywood where a studio has turned to an actress who has had a couple of sizable hits and said, what do you want to do next? And that actress has said, I want to produce. I want this director. She handpicks Russell Crowe to be in it, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's interesting because you kind of want to say off the back of it, Like, it would have been amazing to see what Sharon Stone would have done if she'd continued down that path of being, a Hollywood power player. She produces this, and then she does Casino right after it. Like, it would have been great to sort of see where she could have taken stuff. But, obviously it's not long after this that her career kind of takes a pause for a while before she kind of has a resurgence later on. In terms of Raimi, he's done the Evil Dead trilogy, Crime Wave, Darkman, and been a writer on the Hudsucker Proxy. That's all he's done in the lead up to this. This is his first. It's not his first studio picture. His first studio picture is Army of Darkness, technically, but it's his first like playing on the level of Gene Hackman and Sharon Stone. Like, at the time, Gene Hackman and Sharon Stone, two very big power players in Hollywood, and then you have Leonardo DiCaprio and Russell Crowe, who would go on to become big guys in Hollywood. So when I look at The Quick and the Dead, what strikes me as interesting is that, unlike the movies that Raimi would make after this, so A Simple Plan, For the Love of the Game, The Gift, and then the Spider-Man trilogy, where he very consciously says, I'm not going to Raimi these up. Like, I'm going to make these as straight movies. Like, if you watch Simple Plan, For the Love of the Game, The Gift, none of them scream Raimi. There's nothing about them that you go, oh, that's a Sam Raimi film. This is the last movie that goes, this is a Sam Raimi movie. But what's most interesting is, instead of him saying, I'm just going to make a Western, he actually, I felt, rewatching it this time, brings a lot more of his horror sensibility, and even some of his more exploitative sensibility, like some of more of his earlier kind of grungier, kind of darker ideas to Quick and the Dead. And it's funny because, like, on the surface, the way it's made, it's very rompy, it's very cartoony, it's very, it doesn't seem to have a quote unquote reality. But there, it seems to be a heightened reality. But actually, throughout the movie, I actually found myself watching it and going, oh, this is a lot darker and a lot bleaker and a lot weirder than the movie would have you believe. And it was for that reason that I kind of re-examined it a little bit, rewatching it, and why it has nudged even higher in my estimation of Raimi movies, and why I think one of the biggest sadnesses of cinema is that Raimi decided along the way to stop being Raimi.
So what did you mean? You didn't get into what that was?
What do you mean?
The darker, grungier.
Well, some of the flaws in the characters, certainly the idea of Hackman's character going up against his own son. Some of the violence in the film is very gritty. Some of the handling of the idea of like a female being in the role. Some of the parallels between, what he did with her father and what he's doing with Russell Crowe. The fact that she, as a daughter, kills her own father. But it wasn't just the story beats. It was also, and I can't point to any one particular thing, but it was sort of the way, the decisions that were made in it that were clearly not just scripted decisions, that were things that Raimi put in there that added to a sort of meanness in the film, but a good meanness, like not a bad meanness, but like a malevolent, dark meanness that was in the movie that I appreciated. That Raimi is known for. Like, if you hear stories of him, like the way he treated Bruce Campbell on set, or, you know, the stuff that he's wanted to put in his pictures in the past, or, you know, the Raimi who, when he was like, how extreme can I make this scene in Evil Dead? Oh, I'm going to full on have my lead actress raped by the forest. Like the young, malevolent, like evil, demonic Raimi who kind of came up with some of these ideas seems to be alive and well in The Quick and the Dead. Even if it's under the surface a little bit of all this whiz-bangery, it's in there, and it weirdly shone through for me on this second rewatch. Not second rewatch. I've watched this a bunch of times, but like on this recent rewatch. I mean.
I'm sorry. I'm not being like obtuse or anything, but like where was that? I'm not saying it wasn't. I just like I know you're saying that the darkness of Raimi shone through, but I'm not saying that it doesn't. I'm just interested to know where you saw that.
I mean, throughout the movie, I wasn't, because I wasn't expecting to talk about it. I didn't like make mental notes, but I remember watching it and on Sunday and feeling that little things. Like the Lance Henriksen character is a really interesting character, and the way he is treated in the film. You know, some of the deaths and what are done with the bodies or the injured after the deaths. Like, it just, I think the younger me watched it and was very frivolous about it, but the older me watched it and felt more weight to it and more almost more empathy in it in some weird way with the characters in the film.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
And I think that Sharon Stone, I think she plays it really well. I think they all play it really well. I think there's some really.
I think it's instructive that, because I was thinking about something you were saying. I think it's instructive that it's her film, and she surrounds herself with like really, really good actors. Like, she's not afraid to be like, I don't want to be in a movie where I might be outshone. It's like, if I get to make a movie, I want to make a movie with great actors.
Yeah. Well, there's some really interesting things in the movie, and part of me loves the fact that Raimi went full bore Raimi on a Western. Like, I absolutely love the fact that out in the world is a Sam Raimi, you know, crash zooms, Dutch angles, you know, whiz bang Western. Like, that's awesome. I love that. But part of me also wishes, because of, I think, what is in the story and the way everyone acts the movie, that The Quick and the Dead was played a little straighter, because I really think that the way Sharon Stone is in the film, and the way Gene Hackman is in the film, and the way Russell Crowe is in the film and stuff, and Lance Henriksen especially, those characters, I just think there's some really interesting character beats, because whether it was on the page or whether Stone decided to play it this way, I think a lot of other women, or a lot of filmmakers, forget women, I think a lot of filmmakers, especially male filmmakers, would look at a female-driven Western where initially it is on the page as if she is the man with no name walking into town, is going to solve the problem, she's the protagonist, blah, 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 blah. That the only way to do this would be to, you know, pick a strong woman like a Sharon Stone or whatever, and have her play it like a man would play it, but she happens to be a woman. I think what's very interesting about the way Sharon Stone decides to play it is she brings the nerves and the vulnerability and the the moral questions and the horror of the situation and the horror of who Hackman is. She brings all of that to her performance throughout the film, and it's not a straight through line of a character. It is a character who, I mean, how many revenge movies do you watch, men or women in the lead, where they literally start to question, not should they be doing it, but are they up to it? Is this something that they can do? Is this something that they want to do? Is this something like there was the fact that she didn't have all the answers, and the fact that she wasn't just, oh, I've been, any other movie would be like, I've been training for this since I was 8 or whatever age she was, in her flashback. And I'm just going to come into town, shoot whoever I need to in the contest to get in front of Hackman, and then kill Hackman and ride off into the sunset. And this movie doesn't do that. This movie has like a real conundrum and a real performance at its heart. And she doesn't just carry the movie, but she improves it at every step, and is every bit Hackman's equal and Russell Crowe's equal in the acting stakes in the scenes that she plays with them. I mean, and then there are little touches like Hackman through most of the movie, is puffed up, antagonist, villain, mustache twirling Hackman. And then there's that sequence where you see him in his, long underwear, his Western underwear or whatever, sat at the table, like, looking at all his wealth or whatever he's doing. And his hair is white and his skin is wrinkled and he's got the little reading glasses on, and he looks old. Like Kim looked up while she was watching. She was like, "Oh, he looks so old in that shot." And it was this beautiful, like.
There was a very. I was thinking that same shot struck me too. That's very true. I think you're right about that idea of it's a strong enough story without the whiz-bangery. But then I guess you could argue, to a certain extent, that that a quick draw competition, which is what the film is based around, is like, normally that's a climax of a movie where it's a one-off thing and it's a moment of instant catharsis. Yeah. If your whole film is based around like 7 or 8 of these same things where it's not a gunfight or an action sequence, it's just a single moment where you're asking people to be as invested in the outcome of each thing, that the long silence, the wait for the clock to go, the drop, that it has tension, it has merit. I think if you took away Raimi's whiz-bangery, which I agree in terms of the characters of Hackman and DiCaprio and Crowe and Sharon Stone, they've all got big enough stories that it could withstand not having whiz-bangery around it. But I don't know that the engine of the movie, like it's the thing that's going to provide, or where all of its dramatic tensions are going to be worked out, can stand just in terms of like people's bums on seats watching it in the cinema without some whiz-bangery. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think you can then I don't think you can have serious, examinations of these people's characters and then have all that worked out with like whiz-bangery, right? In the gunfights, right? So you have to somehow like meld the two things together, and that's what I mean about the space thing. Is that like the characters in Hot Fuzz, for an example, or in Space to some extent. Space might even be better because although they're shorter. Like you care about the characters and they go through real emotional journeys and they interact with each other in believable ways, right? And they're looking to come to terms with their lives and their problems. But the vehicle that in the case of Space that Edgar Wright is using to tell those stories and to dramatize their internal and external conflict is a kind of a fun, homage mostly to horror films or science fiction films or cult films, which is in itself a reflection of how these characters live their lives. But it's a way of enlivening what are pretty dull lives, right? A guy who wants to be a cartoonist and a woman who wants to be a writer living in North London and not really getting anywhere is not like, you can see if there was an indie film about that, it would be very po-faced, very navel gazing, it would last forever, lots of, long philosophical conversations, and it would, it could be really boring. But you can tell their stories as effectively or even more effectively by dramatizing them in a larger than life, let's use the mechanics of a genre picture, but dial it up to 11. Yeah. And that way we can have fun with how these people come to terms with their fates, but in a way that makes it exciting and fun to watch without necessarily reducing the impact. And I think that although I know what you mean about the maybe less whiz-bangery, but she still gets to give a great performance. Yes. And Gene Hackman still gets to be great and have that moment in the shot. And I think if anything, where I agree with you on the Sam Raimi thing is, I don't see any reason why he couldn't have done that with like other types of movies, with a sci-fi movie or a whatever. And he wouldn't have made like $500 million blockbusters, but he wouldn't have been out of work. No. He just kept making films. Like you say, he's clearly got, like, no matter how good the script is, like clearly Sharon Stone is a good producer. If she's the engine behind the movie, then she's a great producer. She'd have to be, given how well everything comes together and the fine line it treads between being entertaining but also meaningful and having relatable characters. There's no reason why he couldn't have done that, but just using a different genre to tell people's stories.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, there aren't many, in the grand scheme of things, directors who, bring something entirely new to the medium. There really aren't that many. You know what I mean? You could probably do a few handfuls, maybe not even that many, who really brought something new to the medium. And Raimi was a director who burst on the scene with, a very low budget, very grimy horror movie that when anyone who knew anything about film watched it, looked past the horror of it, looked past the budget of it, looked past the griminess of it, and looked past the naivety of it, and saw a director, a person, Sam Raimi, doing artful, weird, different, inventive stuff. Like when the Palace Pictures guys who picked it up in the UK, where it became a big success and then was resold to America, when they first saw it, the first Evil Dead, it wasn't the bloodletting or the demons or whatever that they talked about. They talked about the idea that in one part of Evil Dead, the camera is up above the rafters of the cabin, following the top of Ash's head. And as it moves across the beams of the cabin, for reasons known only to Raimi, there is a noise on the soundtrack that goes whomp, 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 like as it passes the beams in the cabin. And they're like, wait, is the camera making the noise of it passing past the beams in the cabin? Like, why would it do that? Like, it's made them stop and go, wait, what's interesting about this shot? Like, what's interesting about the sound design? What's interesting about whatever? And this is like a 21-year-old working in sub-zero temperatures in Tennessee in one of the shittiest winters they'd ever had, with like no money and everyone leaving his set because they were done working for, peanuts in a shitty situation. And it was just him, Bruce, and his pal Rob, and whoever they could scrounge around. And they come up with these like inventive, creative, different ideas. And there's a reason why everybody who became a film student, who's my age, has done the camera through the wood shot, because everyone watched Evil Dead and went, I've never seen a camera do the things that it does in Evil Dead. He then tops himself with Evil Dead 2, goes even further into a completely wild and weird place with Army of Darkness. And then The Quick and the Dead is like this last hurrah. And everyone is probably listening to this and being like, what about Spider-Man 2? And what about Drag Me to Hell? And I'm like, guys, Drag Me to Hell and the odd fucking lip service scenes that he throws in Spider-Man 2 pale in massive comparison behind Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, and Quick and the Dead. And it is a crushing shame to me that, especially after rewatching Quick and the Dead, that he did not continue along the path of, I've done horror, I've done my dark superhero action movie with Darkman, I've done a Western, now let's do a sci-fi. Now let's do, I would have him do a fucking bedroom farce, but with the Raimi way of doing things. I want to see the Raimi method applied to all of the genres, but we don't get that. We get a guy who's like, well, let me try and be some cross between the Coen brothers and Spielberg, but not quite understand or be as good as either. And it's just not an interesting post Quick and the Dead. It's just not an interesting career. It's not an interesting career. It's a disappointing career that never relives those things. But going back to The Quick and Dead, I agree with you. I think if you have a repetitive scenario like the gunfight or the gun contest, someone like a Raimi is perfect for that, because he's not going to repeat himself. He's going to try and use every damn thing in his bag of tricks, your bag of tricks, Clint Eastwood's bag of tricks, John Carpenter's bag of tricks, whoever's bag of tricks. He's going to steal all of your bag of tricks and try and do all of those things. So you get that from the movie. You get that fan service of, oh, you thought Sergio Leone could shoot a gunfight. Look at this fucking thing. I've done Sergio Leone on steroids. But wait, I've got 6 more of these things. I'm going to come up with lots of other ways of doing them, which is infinitely fascinating to watch just from a filmmaking standpoint. And you're right. I don't think it hurts the story or hurts the portrayal of the characters. I think it hurts the critical appreciation of the film, and I think it hurts the audience.
No, I think that's true. I think that's true.
I think it hurts the audience reaction to the movie, especially if the Westerns, let's say an audience in the 90s, the Westerns that they're used to is the likes of Dances with Wolves and Last of the Mohicans and Unforgiven. These long, slow, very American, very dry, certainly like re-examination of the Western. And to have this come out on the scene starring, the woman from Basic Instinct and Gene Hackman, who was also the antagonist in Unforgiven, people probably were just like, I don't know what to make of this. Like, here's this woman that we only know, or most film goers only knew because of her exploitative vagina shot in Basic Instinct. And the endless memes at the time that inspired, or parodies. And here is here is Gene Hackman, this like hard-bitten leading man from the 70s turned, antagonist in these other movies as he got older, in a movie directed by the guy who made Army of Darkness. On paper, it doesn't make any sense. And you can see why audiences were probably like, what the fuck am I watching? But I would strongly suggest to people, like, watch it again. if there's any descriptive word for Raimi, it's impish. He is impish. He's malevolently impish. So when he does something in a movie, a horror movie or an exploitation movie, that may seem extreme or exploitative, weirdly you forgive him because you kind of just think of him as this like impish child who's just kind of giggling behind the camera and kind of doing things that are a little beyond the pale just to kind of get a reaction. Do you know what I mean by that? You kind of get the idea that he was just like goofing off and coming up with kind of like little impish ideas. And therefore you can't begrudge him. You can't like cancel him because he made like some exploitation decisions. But there are things in Quick and the Dead, like, you know, one of the famous stories about Quick and the Dead is that Bruce Campbell visited the set one day. And on the day that Bruce Campbell visited the set, Sam Raimi was having trouble with Pat Hingle, who plays the saloon owner. There is a subplot, kind of a revenge subplot within a revenge film, where a local gargoyle is disgustingly oozing all over and physically assaulting, is the implication, Pat Hingle's daughter, as if she was a prostitute in the saloon. And that Pat Hingle is complicit in it because he essentially doesn't do anything about it. And Sharon Stone ends up doing something about it. But it's this weirdly dark exploitation element that, of course, rings true because, of course, saloons back in the Wild West were filled with, grossly underaged prostitutes, just in the way that Victorian England was and so on. This is a horrible part of our history, but this is something that existed. But it's rare that in a movie that would appear on paper to be as cartoony as this movie is, that you would have that in it, right? On the day Bruce Campbell shows up to set, Pat Hingle is saying to Sam Raimi, and actually now that I've watched it again, I'm quite rightly so. Pat Hingle is saying as an actor to Sam Raimi, he's saying why does my character not do anything? Why is my character this silent, complicit scumbag in this molestation of my daughter? There's nothing in the script about what I'm meant to be doing. And I seemingly just give the guy the brush off as he leaves the saloon, having been grotesque with my daughter. So it's why don't I do anything? So Sam Raimi, because he had Bruce on set, got Bruce in makeup, Bruce in costume, and contrived this whole sequence where Pat Hingle, attacks Bruce or something, or beats Bruce up, or does this whole thing, right? Bruce was just coming to visit his friend on set, and Sam Raimi ropes him into filming this scene with Pat Hingle. And at the end of the day, Sam Raimi apparently takes Bruce aside, and in his ear goes, "That scene will never appear in the film." And to my knowledge, it's never cropped up on YouTube. To my knowledge, they didn't even expose the film. I don't know, it's never shown up on a Blu-ray or a DVD, or there's no, screenshots of the scene, nothing. But it was a director's trick to kind of say to the actor, fine, we'll give you a scene where you get to be the hero, and then let's just move on, right? But watching the movie now and thinking about that reaction to Pat Hingle's very reasonable question as an actor, is that it does make the whole subplot ickier and darker and weirder and sinister to film it the way Raimi filmed it, to include it the way Raimi included it, because I'm sure on the page, the subplot is in there to give Sharon Stone a way to find her moxie a little bit, right? at the moment of doubt, she's like, well, I can at least take out this pedophile because he's a scumbag pedophile, right? I can at least kill this guy, right? That's what it's there to do on the page. And there's many ways to come at that and how you weave that into it, right? There's the Hollywood sanitized version, and then there is which you see in action movies all the time, so-and-so killed my daughter, so-and-so raped my sister, so-and-so killed my teddy bear, whatever it is, and therefore I'm justified in killing 500 people. And then there's the death wish way of doing it, which is essentially the same thing, but grimier and more winner and sinister and rape dead boy is a thing in movies, so we do it and blah. Michael Winner kind of gritty, weird way of doing things. And Raimi does the Death Wish way of doing things, but in a Hollywood movie. It's a really deft touch, because you get all of the grimness. Winner would have showed it. Winner would have just done some horrible, grim sequence, which thankfully we don't get. But Raimi knows how to imply all of the grimness without ever having to show you the grimness. But he knows how to really imply it in a way that most other movies wouldn't go there. And he does it, like I say, with this kind of impish nature to him. And it just underscores, it's those kind of decisions that just kind of underscore this film and roughen some of the cartoony edges up a bit, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that's true. I mean, I think even the ending of the movie, right, where the people in the town, they club together to save up enough money to get Gene Hackman killed, and the movie ends. So the setup is that because Hackman kills the guy they hire, so in theory Sharon Stone should then sweep in and take that role, right? Because there's the underlying thing that's going through the whole movie, because the doctor says it, although he's an old man so he can get away with it. But that's why I think the whole, I'm assuming Sam Raimi probably said this to Pat Hingle, but what's going on is you don't do anything because no one in this town does anything. No one is doing anything about this. No one is doing anything except saving up money to pay someone else to do what they're too frightened to do, right? So even though there's a thing where Sharon Stone, kills Hackman, right, and then saves the town and she's the big hero, but instead she doesn't kill Hackman to save the town. What she does is she destroys the town and then she kills Hackman. Yeah. So because the implicit message there is because that's all they deserve. They don't deserve to live free and happy, free from Hackman, because they didn't do that. All they have, and the same with Crow and the Marshall's star at the end, is the best that they can have is the chance to build something again, to do it again, but this time better. But what they can't have is we're too frightened to fix our problem. So if you could just take our problem away and we'll just carry on as if that problem was never there. So you don't get to do that. You don't get to be free from Hackman without sacrifice. And if you're not prepared to sacrifice yourself, then you're going to have to lose your town and start again. So there's that, which again is like you're saying, that's quite subversive. In any other film, Sharon Stone kills Hackman and is the hero, right? Yeah. If not, Sharon Stone destroys the town because there are a bunch of worthless cowards who won't stand up for themselves, because she's not there for them. No, she's not being paid by them. There's no scenes of her. Even her she never treats the girl nicely. She's never nice to the girl, right? No. She's deliberately I don't want to be involved with you. I don't want to be involved with anyone. I'm here with my own fucked up shit, with my own journey. I don't have time to be making you feel good about yourself, little girl, or taking care of your problems, town. If I kill Hackman, That's all I give a shit about. So if I have to destroy your town to give me a tiny edge to accomplish I will do that. And you deserve no more than that. So there's no like moments of her empathizing with anybody except possibly Crow. But the reason that she empathizes with Crow is because he is also having a moral struggle. And the reason she empathizes with DiCaprio, I think, is because DiCaprio is young and he represents what she might have been. You know?
Yeah, kind of.
So there's definitely, like you're saying, you know, darker undertones.
There's a lot to that. Like, there's also a lot to the whole. There's the more, as you were talking, that there's more things in this movie again that you could that almost become more and more relevant. You know, I don't want to make like a horrible Trump parable, because obviously this movie was made decades before his unfortunate rise to presidency. But you know, if you look at the townsfolk as like America and Hackman as Trump, the idea that they are as complicit in the existence of Hackman, both for their cowardice, but also for their, their support of him at some point in order for him to get where he is, kind of rings like weirdly prophetic a little bit and weirdly sinister. I mean, not that there haven't always been characters like Hackman or Trump or whatever in the world. Of course they have been. And that's what was so weird about watching Trump's rise to power, was not necessarily everything that came from it, but the idea that literally a cartoony, flabby, personification of an antagonist in a cheap movie became the president. You know what I mean? Like we have seen 101 examples of that in films. The fact that we bore it out in real life became, art doesn't imitate life, or life imitates bad television, or whatever that quote is. But there was definitely an aspect of that, and Quick and the Dead is, whether it means to or not, is playing with some of those themes, and maybe yes in archetype, and maybe yes in cliche, but also in a way that, like, the way Hackman is evil in this movie is weirdly human. Like, it's not exaggerated evil. It's not, there's some mustache twirling, but it's his evil comes from his like pragmatism about all of this. He's like, no. Like, his whole beef with Crow is, you don't get to suddenly be a good person. I have to keep you at my level. You were at my level once, so I have to keep you at that level. Don't you dare try and be a good person. And it could be disdain for the church. It could be disdain for whatever. But it's also his, like, I can't possibly have anyone around me be reformed, because I've got to live in a world that closely resembles the fact that I get away with my evilness and my hideousness.
Well, I think it's about strength. The world I think it's about if Crow gives up the life and becomes a good person and stops killing, then he is stronger than Gene Hackman, and Gene Hackman doesn't want to be weaker than anybody. Even on that, like he senses that to do that would make Russell Crowe a better person. People who are good people who help people who run orphanages or whatever are, in the same way that Trump would consider them, right, to be weak and spineless and not clever enough to do the thing that they, that if they were as clever as him, they would be doing what he was doing.
Right.
So the idea that Russell Crowe could be Gene Hackman, but chooses not to be, and chooses to be a good person, like, stirs up something deep in Hackman that means he is weaker than Crow. And that's what he can't stand. And that's why he kills his son, right? He kills his son because even though clearly he could, because he says, "Oh, I gave him a way out." But it's like, no, you gave him the way out. You gave him was for him to be weaker than you. The real way out is for you to walk away from him because he is young and you are old. And yeah, maybe you're still a little bit faster than him now, but that's only you can let him have it now and walk away, but you can't be weaker than him, so you won't do it. I think that's that dynamic, and I think that that there is parallels with that particular kind of masculinity that Trump does embody. That idea of that strength is, and the appearance of strength is everything, and to appear weak or stupid is the worst thing you could possibly imagine.
Well, also that in order for him to continue to be strong or powerful or in power or whatever, the world has to appear to him based on his philosophy of, it has to appear to be a terrible place, in which people would rather commit crimes or commit murder in order to save their own necks than do anything from a position of true empathy or true, philanthropy. Everyone has to be fallible, and I'm going to prove this, even if it means, destroying your internal morals or your internal, because I'm going to put you in the situation of you either stick to your morals and die, or you bend your morals a little bit in order to survive. And I'm going to put that quiz in front of you because fuck you. And yes, it's everything you said. Like, it's everything about, like, no one can be stronger than him and everyone has to be weaker than him and all that sort of stuff. But it also has to be, in order for his guilt not to manifest over everything he's done, the world has to be a terrible, harsh, selfish place. Like, he has to expose the inherent selfishness of everybody.
I think that's fair. Yeah,
and so
I think that's what the contest is, right? The contest is reducing the world to what he sees it as, which is, if you're the best at killing everybody, you get the money.
Yeah,
you get the life. That's all it is, and you're all the same as me. That's something else. That's quite Trumpy too, right? The idea that the automatic assumption that everybody is the same as you. That's another part of that personality type. And you're right. That I think that's true about him and Crowe. And in other words, what that thing about the star in the end is that Russell Crowe's triumph, which again is quite odd. Russell Crowe's triumph is not that he sticks to his morals, that he doesn't kill anybody, but that he learns to use his gifts for good. That to deny them, that denial is not salvation, but rather understanding yourself and limits. And as you say, like finding an inner moral compass. And Hackman chooses to ignore it in favor of selfishness because that's in his mind strength. But Crowe learns that he can use strength and skill, as it were, for others, right? That's what being a lawman is, in theory, right? It's using your gifts for the benefit of others and not yourself. And so they are the same person. And then it's a matter of choice. And the choice is not to either be yourself or not be yourself. It's the choice to benefit yourself or benefit others.
Yeah. With who you intrinsically are and the skills that you intrinsically have.
Yeah.
And I think that the last thing I would say about the movie that's very interesting, especially from a female protagonist standpoint, because it doesn't label. That's the other nice thing about it. It doesn't labor that point. It doesn't go,
no, it doesn't.
Ooh, a female protagonist. Ooh, women can't be. Like, one of the biggest bugbears I have, every time a movie comes out with like a female lead in it who's an action hero or a superhero or a strong female lead, is that everyone has to crow about it. Everyone has to bleed on about it. Every fucking headline has to be like, Hollywood finally gives a female a strong action lead. I'm like, where have you been for 50 years? Like, are the amount of female action heroes equal to the amount of male action heroes? No, of course not. Is there a vast bias towards men being strong characters versus women? Yes. Is there a horrible disparity? Yes, of course there is. And that deserves to be righted and deserves to be changed and deserves to be improved upon. No question whatsoever. But the difference between when a female heads up an action film now and when a female made an action film back then was that it wasn't about, like, nothing in the movie goes, oh, you're a woman, you're a woman, you're a woman. Nothing in the movie.
Yeah, in fact, they get out, they get that out of the way. They get that out of the way really quickly because Gene Hackman says there's nothing in the rules that says a woman can't be in the contest. It's just women can't shoot for shit. And then immediately Sharon Stone pulls off a feat of expert gunplay, and it's never talked about again. And the other advantage of the structure of the movie and basing it around the contest is it's not about how strong she is. It's not about, how mean she is, right? It's not about, like, even elements of good fortune. She earns the fight with Hackman because at each stage she has to be faster than the person she's drawing against. That's it. Like, that's the nature of the contest. The nature of the contest is, are you a quicker draw than the other person, right? Than the other guy. And because she is every step of the way, she earns the right to come at Hackman right at the end. Right. So every time she's in a fight, no one's like, oh, she's a woman, she's a woman. It's like she's fast. We've seen her be fast. So it's like you say, it becomes a non-issue after that point. And not because she could be man or she could be woman, because you're right. It's really interesting the way that her doubt about, I'm too scared, I can't do it, I can't face him, and she is, like, properly frightened of him right up until she has dinner with him, right up until that really great scene where she walks up to him and says, I'm going to be one that kills you or whatever. And Howard goes, have you got some particular problem with me? It's such a great line. And, like, only Hackman could say it that way. And it's so great. And that's, and then it just, it's a contest of equals.
Yeah.
This particular thing. So her being a woman or not makes no difference. And that's why it's, that's why it's cool.
The last thing I would say about it is that what is very interesting and also is like an interesting sadness to the movie is how everyone who is defeated in the gunfights, bar the weird guy with the wagon wheel that she meets at the beginning of the movie, bar him, Tobin Bell. Outside of him, everyone else, the Native American guy, Lance Henriksen, Leonardo DiCaprio, they are
Keith
all...
David. Don't forget Keith David.
Keith David's amazing in the movie.
Yeah, he is really great.
But they're all braggarts. Like, they're all full of braggadocio. They're all like the Native American is like, I cannot be killed by bullets. Leonardo DiCaprio is like, I'm the best shot in town, fastest shot in town. Look at me, look at me.
Yeah.
And Ace's McGonagall or whatever his name is, the Lance Henriksen's character.
Yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about that. I hadn't put that together, but you're right.
It's all cock of the walk guys.
Yeah.
Who have nothing to back it up, and their demise.
All mouth, no trousers.
Right. Their demises, while expected, have a tinge of sadness to them because you do realize, like, at a certain point, you're all woefully out of your depth. But
there's kind of like an Alan Partridge, Captain Mannering kind of, you're awful, but I can't help identifying with, your life is mostly bullshit and bluster with nothing to back it up, because I feel like that. You know what I mean?
No, completely. It's the imposter syndrome, right? But this is sort of imposter syndrome taken to, a mortal degree. And there's something nice there about, and I'm sure you found this as I did, like, the fake it till you make it, and I hate little buzz phrases like that, but it is a very American trait, that the kind of have confidence in yourself, have confidence in what you are doing, and the rest will somehow fall into place. Like that mindset, which does pervade the culture. It's interesting to see that embodied in those characters that are so then easily dispatched with. And there's something subversive in that as well. So I don't know. I think that I think the script is far better than anyone gives it credit for. I think there's a lot in it beyond the Dutch angles and crash zooms. It's one of the few Westerns, like I say, most Westerns I watch, and within 45 minutes, I'm like, nothing has happened and nothing's been established. And I don't know what the point of this film is. And it's always frustrating to me. And it's one of the things that means that the genre is just not one that I have. I keep trying. I've watched a ton of the old ones. I've watched a ton of the new ones, but very rarely do I really hold on to one. What I love about this movie is from the first frame to the last frame, the script, without being Captain Exposition, without being heavy-handed in any moralizing or messaging or anything like that, the script tells a really neat story full of genuinely interesting, fascinating, frightening, weird, funny characters that has beats in it that are genuinely subversive and has moments in it that you haven't seen in any other movie, all of which is wrapped up in a phenomenal 90s cast with Sam Raimi at the top of his game. And, it's probably a movie that's 20 years ahead of its time. Like if it came out, if it come out in the last 10 years, especially with the fandom that Raimi has and all the rest of it, I think it would be way more appreciated. That's
what I mean. I think if it come out like post Shaun of the Dead, like that idea of that mischievous filmmaking is okay, like the being mischievous and having fun while you're telling a story telling a relatable story is okay. You can do that. So that it feels like maybe 5 years ahead of its time. But I agree with you. I think it is ahead of its time for sure. There was a desire for that kind of self-aware movie, but with heart, like self-aware with heart.
Well, I would, while she gets a lot of plaudits for Casino and a lot of, what's the word? Infamy for Basic Instinct. I would bet if you sat down and talked to Sharon Stone, I would bet that this would be one of those, like, that's secretly my favorite movie type thing. Do you know what I mean?
I agree, because it's a great character. It's a great journey. She plays it really well. She gets to be cool, but she also gets to be relatable. She gets to be like the strongest character on, you know what I mean? Like on the screen. Like whether it's with Hackman or Crowe, like she's the strongest.
But she's not strong in the sense that she's not subjugating herself or her spirit or her insecurities. No. It's not just strong, like steely-eyed bollocks. It's like I don't know. It's just really good. And I think this is ripe for a rediscovery. And thank you for allowing me to waffle about it.
No, thank you, mate.
So that is it.
But I think we rescued a bad situation, mate.
We did.
Unlike Neil Marshall.
Yeah, poor Neil.
Poor Neil.
But I got to watch The Void, which everyone had been talking about, and really enjoyed it. Definitely a good midnight movie. Turn all the lights off and get spooked out and grossed out. Good fun. And an interesting all-round look at filmmakers who came from indie horror and had a variety of successes or failures, depending on how you look at it.
Right.
Thematically strong. All right, sir. Take care.
Cheerio, man. Bye.
Bye.
A voice in the hole whispers it was a delight. The players and the band wonder what did we do right. While people at the top pat down everyone in line, taking wallets and jewelry that you umpire says, hey, what about me? The referee is too busy watching soap operas on TV. And those who should know better kick up a stink, asking those of us not sleeping, oh, so please don't think. I'm backing out of this agreement. I'm clearing all my debt. We're laying tables at the gunfight, harboring the memories we're pretending to forget. You can take it to the water, but please don't get it wet. Life is only in the pictures, it's the purchases you don't make. You're told is all that you'll regret, all that you'll regret. The lazy electrician says I'll get to it when I get to it. The crowd that's slowly forming is having difficulty assembling the kit. The cameras that don't stop flashing capture culture on the run, but they only hang the ones that wind up everyone. The small print and annotations go on for miles and miles and miles. No one has time to make arrangements or for polishing the tiles. Your overbearing presence has been noted in your files. Life is only in the pictures, it's the purchases you do make that'll have them rolling in the aisle, rolling in the aisle. A voice in the stalls whispers this was a delight. The players on the pitch wonder what did we do right. And the people at the top shoot everyone in line, painting portraits and laughing. The news says this seems fine. It seems fine.